Cats and Kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 12 of the anime series, Brynhildr in the Darkness. And this was thoroughly an exposition episode, pretty much a turning point in the series where we're getting a lot of answers thrown in our faces as we essentially pick up where we left off with, Valkyria, aka Mako, and Ichijiku basically coming for this Subject 1107. We finally find out that that's Katori, and much as I suspected, there was something up with her character, but it's not quite what I expected either. So it's very interesting that we basically see a showdown going on between the Ryota, the witches, and, essentially Ichijiku, who is almost a soulless character. He doesn't care about any other life other than his little sister, which I can relate to. I have a sister who I'm very protective over. But, this guy is psychotic with what he's trying to do and what he's been doing. Essentially, he put aspects of her brain matter into this Drassel, what they basically call those little alien symbiotes that go inside the Honists of the witches. He intertwined the brain matter of his sister with one and then put that into Katori and was hoping, her consciousness would come back to life somehow, and of course that didn't work. But then we find out there's even more going on with that, as we see sort of flashbacks back and forth that have to do with the lab and the conglomerate, the shadow conglomerate that's giving Ichijiku all his orders. We finally find out what their whole purpose has been, and very typically of sort of a sci-fi fantasy-esque story with super soldiers and everything, it turns out that they have uncovered the fact that aliens have created humanity, have created all life on Earth, and essentially they've done so through finding ruins where they've gotten all this technology, and I guess found these symbiotes that they're using, these Drassels. Maybe they reproduced them, or maybe there were eggs that were left to be hatched, and they're utilizing the powers gifted through them by implanting them into young girls, as we see throughout the course of this series. But what's interesting is the motivation behind it is to try to create a hybrid of the most perfect ultimate human beings, and the motivation behind that is that these perfect human beings, these uber beings, if you will, would be then the ones to dominate the world. So of course there's world domination, there's sort of controlling of lesser beings and everything like that. It's almost like a perversion of the mutants from X-Men. But as we see with Ichijiku and his orders to kill these witches, including Kuroha, which is seemingly the one thing she has a problem with. She doesn't want to kill her, and this seems to strengthen the idea that Mako, her alternate name, and Kuroha must be related on some level. If there was a familial bond, that would explain why she doesn't want to actually have to kill Kuroha. But even with this in mind, she ends up having to follow her orders from Ichijiku because, again, that Stockholm Syndrome, she really genuinely loves him. As we find out, he feels nothing for her and doesn't put any worth of her life. Essentially she finds this out over hearing once everything's explained to Katori about Ichijiku's sister and everything. And, we see Ryota getting in the way, and essentially Ryota is pretty much left for dead for a long time in this episode. We pretty much see him die. And this is where Hatsuna, there was a great moment where he tried to keep Hatsuna's being there out of the awareness of Ichijiku and Valkyria. She was going to try to sneak up behind Valkyria and stop her Honest from operating, take her powers away, lay her out essentially. But that failed because the Honest that Valkyria has is unlike anything they've ever seen before. But we see Hatsuna do something very selfless in return for the selflessness she tested Ryota for in the previous episode. She decided to return the favor and sacrifice her own life to heal him using her secondary power, which was to heal. And he ends up completely fine. After basically Kazumi and Kuroha administer CPR, they bring him back to life because his heart wasn't beating. And so then we're introduced to the fact that Katori's, Drassel contains powers within it that can reset the Earth, that can reset all life on Earth by destroying it effectively. And I guess this was kind of like a safety net for the alien beings that created life in the first place. It didn't come out right, or they weren't happy with it. Well, wipe it all out and start again, wipe off the chalkboard, so to speak. Only that doesn't bode well for all the millions of individuals with their own consciences and everything like that. All those lives to have to be lost, that's pretty insane, I have to say. So once we've gotten all this explained to us, we find out out there's a whole other group that is anti the lab, essentially. The Hexenjagd, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, hopefully. And they almost look like a faction of the church. I mean, they're all wearing religious attire and crosses and everything like that. They look like nuns. And their plan is to essentially put a stop to what the lab's doing and excise the world of the dangers that the witches represent by killing them. So they're not all good, even though they have certain good intentions. You know what they say, good intentions pave the road to hell. And we basically see this clash of motivations as they come onto the scene, and they basically have inadvertently chased Ichijiku and Valkyria away. And so we basically have an agreement, finally in the end of this episode, between Hexenjagd, Ryota, Kuroha, the witches. You know, they're going to be going after the lab. They now have a mutual interest. And even though Hexenjagd wants to kill the witches, they've agreed because, you know, they don't have death suppressant pills long enough for more than a week and so on and so forth, that what's the point in killing them? Just let them live and everything. But, of course, because the witches are going to be going to chase the lab, I bet Ryota has it up his sleeve to grab more death suppressant pills at some point, and this may cause another clash once they've maybe gone in with the lab, with Hexenjagd as well. And, of course, as they're heading toward the lab to make that confrontation, we see that Kotori's Honest has finally exposed the alien. The alien is hatching, and all hell's about to break loose because an energy barrier's surrounding the world that's going to wipe out all life. How much worse could it get? So all of the events in this episode are definitely stacked with just a lot of compelling twists and turns and revelations. As I say, an exposition episode through and through, but I was riveted to it. It's like about time we get to some hardcore aspects of the narrative of this story, the details and everything. I was just delighted that we finally had all this revealed. So otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. I hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.